Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. As you can see, I'm not there. Anyway, before we get to the lesson, I want to explain a few things to you. I do not use catchy phrases or what may appear to be gimmicks for the sake of using them. I want to help you embed triggers within your mind and heart. Something that as you go about your day will remind you of a message or of what our Heavenly Father would remind you to tap into or walk in as you fulfill your daily purpose. The world has already embedded triggers in your mind both directly and indirectly. First of all, in the 60s and early 70s, until they outlawed it, film companies would embed one frame that said, have a Coke, or one frame that said, eat popcorn, or eat candy. And even though your conscious mind couldn't see it, your subconscious mind would see it, and suddenly you would go, I think I need a Coke. Okay? Well, the world does that to you every day. Maybe you haven't heard about those, but maybe you have heard some things that sound similar. Let's see, if I sang a little ditty and said, you deserve a break today, so let's get up and get away to
McDonald's.
also get a bucket of
Chicken.
and baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and
Chevrolet.
all right, to infinity and beyond. Anyway, when you hear any of those, they trigger certain things. That it's all part of marketing. Anyway, you can have some of those embedded in you, so that you can pull in spiritual things instead. Okay, now I want to start out by teaching in a parable about a parable. Okay? Um, at the end of each table are plates. Please take one. Lori and David will be coming around with a couple of bags of chips each. I want you to grab no more than 3 chips from each container. Place them on your plate and do not eat or play with them. I will let you know when to eat them and in the order that I say. I will give you a little information on each one of them, and I want you to remember what I tell you about them. Part of this lesson is a heart check. The first one I want to talk about are the Munchos. Some people swear by these, but I can only handle a few. I always wondered about them and that different tastes that they have. Okay, you may eat one or all of your Munchos. We will do the same for the other chips as I tell you. Okay, so Munchos are made from dried potato bits that are ground up and mixed with cornmeal. A slurry is created and passed through a series of rollers to achieve a consistent thickness and also a consistency where they are drying and can be cut. So after they go through the series of rollers, they get to drum slitters. And drum slitters are just giant cookie cutters. And they create the form of the chip that you can see. Anyway, and then in the case of Munchos, they're cooked freestyle. Okay? In other words, they're not supported or anything like that. So they come out misshapen. And finally, they are bagged and become Muncho bits in transit and handling. And their characteristics are there's no real structure. They started out recognizable, not pure, and get bent out of shape under pressure. Okay, now let's all partake of the Pringles. Yes, they are good, but they would not be my first choice. They are made with ground dehydrated potatoes, aka potato flour, with added water and agents. This is made into a slurry and passed through rollers to come up with a consistent thickness. They are slowly dried in order to pass through drum slitters. Then the singulated chips are passed through formers as they are cooked to guarantee a consistent, stackable shape. And their characteristics are they have good looks, however, they are fragile out of the package. They are uniform in shape, but they require a disposable support system to maintain their appearance. Now, the Lay's, for the most part, they are made from sliced potatoes, cooked in oil, freestyle, with added salt and bagged. They wind up misshapen from the cooking, and some become bits in handling and shipping. However, no one can eat just one. And their character is in their taste. However, they are shaped by their environment. They're fragile and don't dip well. Finally, the Ruffles. They're ripple cut potatoes cooked in oil with added salt. They maintain structural integrity with scarring from their environment. However, their character, they have distinction. They're not perfect, but they have hills and valleys. They're stronger, and they definitely dip well. Well, if I was there, I would be asking you, what parable is this a parable of? Well, since I'm not there, I'm going to tell you. If you haven't guessed the parable I'm relating this to, it is the parable of the sower, found in Matthew 13, 1 through 9, and 18 through 23. On the day after Yeshua left the house, he was sitting by the sea, and large crowds gathered around him. So he got into the boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood on the shore. He told them many things in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out and spread some seed. As he was scattering the seeds, some seeds fell by the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on the rocky ground, where they didn't have much soil. They sprang up immediately because the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up, they were withered away. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew and choked them out. But others fell on the good soil and were producing fruit. They yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. And the same chapter, verses 18 through 23. So then, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom, and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the one having been sown along the road. The one sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root himself, but lasts only a short while. And when trouble or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he falls away. But the one sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, and the worries of the world and the seduction of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Now the one sown on the good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit, yielding 100-fold, some 60, and some 30 times what was sown. Now, I have a question, and let's see if one of the young'uns can answer this. What is the oldest occupation that man has been involved in? Okay, farming. Now, I want to tell you about a man I admired since I was a boy, and about faith versus knowledge. My grandpa's garden was only 8 by 14, and yet it yielded corn, tomatoes, green beans, peppers, okra, squash, and zucchini. And I'm sure there were a few herbs in it too. This defied all farming knowledge. With the spacing, I mean, practically corn stalks you plant, or corn seeds you plant, about 16 inches apart, okay? Because they required a lot of nutrients and it took up a lot of water. Well, my grandfather's were 6 inches apart. And by all means, none of them should have grown. Also, the fact that he got so much produce out of these things, it was a wonder. But my grandpa didn't know anything about farming, but he knew everything about faith. And it was nothing for him to be seen laying hands on the crop. And I tell you what, some of the best vegetables I've ever had. In fact, he composted before he knew what it was. However, his garden was anti-Torah. And that's in Leviticus 19:19. You must keep my statutes. You are not to crossbreed different kinds of animals. You are not to sow your field with 2 kinds of seed. You are not to wear a garment woven with 2 kinds of materials. Even though the food was good, the vegetables were good, because of the fact that he had planted different vegetables in the same lot, they would not have been acceptable as first fruits offerings. or any offerings to the temple. Okay, let's read from Matthew. Oh, I've already done that. In the first case, the sower is sowing some seeds and they fall on the road and the birds eat it up. When anyone hears a word from the kingdom and doesn't understand, the evil one takes it away. He said other seeds fell on the rocky soil and they sprung up quick, and as the sun beat down, the plants were scorched. This is the one that hears the word and has temporal joy, but when the things get tough, he gets gone. The other seeds fall among the thorns, and the thorns choke them. This is the one who allows the cares of this world and greed to destroy the message. And the lust fell on good soil and produced a great crop. This is the person who hears and understands and bears much fruit. Now we need to understand that we are all farmers, and that the parable is not about sowing, but about soils. The seeds that we are planting are time, service, resources, and testimony. And when it comes to time, each day we are given 24 hours or 1,440 minutes or 86,400 seconds. And these start new every day. In the case of the service, we invest our talents and gifts. We can visit the sick and the elderly. We can write cards and letters or make phone calls to encourage others. Now, as far as our resources, it's not just about the money in the bank. You can cook meals, you can pick up things for people that need help. But when it does come to money, remember that you are not limited to your bank account. When you are praying for someone else and for their benefit, heaven will open up the windows of heaven. And now the tough one, testimony. What is this? It's not just the testimony of when you agreed that Yeshua was Lord of your life, but it's about how you treat others, what you do in public, and your consideration toward your fellow man. I've often said that one good example of this is returning the shopping carts to where they belong. Regardless of rain, snow, sleet, or gloom of night, it shows caring and consideration for other people's property. Now, a good example of this is a lady comes out of a store pushing a cart. It's raining. She goes to the back of a station wagon. There's 50 I Love Jesus stickers on it, so you know the car is saved. And then she unpacks everything into her car, and she looks around and just shoves the cart. And you have another lady that comes out and has always thought that Christians were hypocrites and just wants to find some way to justify her position. And she was just given a good example. Oh, also, here's a plug for a good place to plant. It's in the helmet of salvation. I've already told you the work they do. And look at the baby on the card and tell me he's not worth everything you have. Also, one thing to keep in mind as you sow is we are but workers. And the reason I bring this up is some people, it kind of goes to their head, or they use the fact that they're witnessing as a book of S&H green stamps. Every time they do it, they put a stamp there. Eventually, they get their stamp book full, and they can go get certain things. That's not how heaven works. Heaven works by what's inside, and what's inside should show outside. Anyway, in 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted, Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. So don't feel not only heavy-headed about it, but also don't think that you have to take them the whole way. He sends other workers. You just do what you can. Now, how many of you have ever farmed? And I'm not talking about planting a garden. Now, in Western movies, we see a family traipsing across the country to get to Kansas. They get there, they build a house, and they start to work the ground. And then in the fall, we see meadows flowing of wheat. How many of you know that it doesn't happen that way? And that wasn't how it worked. So the land will have to be cleared. It has to be worked. There's rock removal. And it would have been done in sections. Nowadays, you don't go out and buy the biggest John Deere tractor and start tearing up the ground and plant 100 acres. You have to be deliberate about where you plant, how you prepare the soil. You take soil samples, you send them off and get a report back so you can know what best will grow in certain areas. And then you have to plan how you're going to approach the actual planting. And this would involve GPS, knowing rain patterns, and how to deal with soil erosion. You have to consider crop and land rotation and whether or not you will have to irrigate. So in other words, it takes time. There's a lot of work before you actually start tearing up the ground. But again, this lesson is not about the actual sowing and planting. It's about the soil. In order to do things right, we have to understand that everything that we have belongs to the Lord, and that we are but stewards. We should be deliberate about our approach to plant our seeds. We are not to approach it as if all we have to do is get rid of a bag of seeds. So we are not to walk with a bag on our shoulder with a hole in it. There are places to witness and places not to witness. It's never okay to go into an alleged gentleman's bar and try to convert the dancers. We were told not to give what is holy to dogs or to cast our pearls before swine. And that's from Matthew 7:6. You need to learn to look into people's eyes. You will see hurt, you will see longing, and you will see need. And always remember that you may be the only Yeshua they will ever see. So shower the people you love with love, And if you don't love them, ask for it. And not only ask for love, but ask for a burden for them. Now I thank you, and that's probably the shortest message you will ever hear from me. Anyway, Shalom Aleichem.